Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is Recruiting EQ, episode number 90, the rise of EQ hiring. I'm Rick Coluccio, your host every week, pretty much every week anyway. Less so this year, but on Wednesdays at noon. And thank you for joining us live. If you're listening to this after the fact, thank you too. Even if you're not joining us live, you also deserve thanks. Our special guest for today is Sabe Mpofu, who is the founder of Millenilink. He and I, you guys, we've had some great conversations. I'm very interested to dive in a little deeper with him. Both of us are live from sunny Toronto. Today I'm in sunny Liberty Village. For those of you who are noticing that I'm in a different background, the joy of downtown living is that sometimes they build a condo building next to your home and podcast studio, and they cut your power off. Sabi, they do this to me.
You made a pretty good last minute switch up. I was quite impressed when you told me the story of your morning. I was like, really?
Yeah.
Thank you for keeping this on schedule.
You got it. That's also the other beauty of living downtown Toronto, is at least you have options nearby.
Yeah. The way you resorted to the backup was quite impressive.
Yeah. Thank God for WeWork. Shout out to WeWork.
Right.
Look, I've got a Shure sponsorship I'm going for today and a WeWork sponsorship. Hit me up, you guys. Hit me up.
Yeah. Seriously.
Sabi, how are you? How you're also in sunny downtown Toronto today?
I am. Wishing for more sun, but happy for what we have. You know, I think we're almost in non-jacket weather. Fingers crossed. That's soon. But I'm good. Can't complain as far as work and personal. Excited to talk to you. I know. Last time I spoke to you, I just kind of got lost in conversation, and we got up, and I was like, "What happened?" That was supposed to be a half-hour meeting, turned into 90 minutes. So it's definitely looking forward to connecting today.
But that was too much, right? Like, we had a half-hour meeting down in the sort of lobby of your space, which is this nice barista bar kind of situation downtown, and then I'm like, they're cleaning up. I think they're kicking stuff. I think we've lost the whole afternoon somehow in a good way.
Yeah, they were just not going to serve us anymore. We could stay for as long as we wanted, but yeah, like I said this to you when when we were just coming on, we've definitely, I guess, this is now aging us, but we've been through a few eras in recruitment, and we're now the back in my day guys. So
100%, 100%. It is up to us. We've now taken over as the leaders of tomorrow, Sabi,
Yeah.
And good for us.
We just need a fireplace and s'mores, and we can tell recruitment stories forever.
Exactly. We need smoking jackets, like Hugh Hefner style smoking jackets and slippers and a cigar, and be like, back in my day,
we used the yellow pages.
Yeah, exactly. I used to call based on cue cards and torn out sheets from books.
It only took me 12 tries to get a hold of him, but damn it, I did.
Yeah, he hated me until he realized I was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's funny.
It is funny. And yes, we have been through the eras. And I think that's, you brought up the topic to me last time we were speaking right off the cuff about we are entering an era where EQ hiring is perhaps back in style. It's hard to even tell, but in style in a new way. It's the dawn of a new era of that kind of thing. That aligns very well with the mission statement of this podcast in general. So it just made sense for us to continue that awesome conversation here for the benefit of people who are just getting in there or people who are also feeling the same way.
Yeah, I think I kind of, almost came into it just through, my own learnings as a leader and, just kind of going through what allows us to hire in the recruitment industry and, the way we go to market and, just naturally, we create all these requirements for the way we sell or the way we recruit and, the results that we want to achieve. And, fundamentally, I think what allows us to get there is the EQ. But, what made me bring it up with you when we met was, the need to be very specific and intentional about, what EQ is or how we define it in our organizations and, what we want to, look for. Because when done well, that's the part of the job that is harder to, coach and help people develop in. And so, I kind of just came to, my own realization and was like, hey, I feel like this is maybe what we want to focus on from like an 80-20 kind of thing. And, skills can be trained, but EQ is a bit harder to fill gaps in.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I do want to get into some of the weeds with you on that too. But before we get too far down that rabbit hole, I would like to maybe take a little bit of time if you could talk about sort of your background, your story, bringing you to here, like prior to being, a founder and a leader in your own business.
Yeah.
Maybe just a little bit about what made the man we see before us today. Your journey to get here would be great.
Yeah. So I graduated from McMaster in 2008, and at the time that was the previous, I guess, recession or downturn in the economy.
Yeah.
And really started recruiting. That was my first role, and started recruiting in a downturn, and kind of got like a bird's eye view as to so I was on the recruiting side, but I'm observing people, selling as well, and just understanding like what makes clients or how they prioritize hiring when everything else is like, hey, we need to cut costs, right? And just kind of understanding the importance of mission critical projects, and making sure that you deliver on those versus roles that maybe are nice to have. And so that was my introduction to recruiting. Got into sales pretty quickly about a year after recruiting, and had the opportunity to sell to various sectors in the Toronto market. Primarily financial services was a big one, but then also did some public sector work there, a little bit of education, and other private sector organizations. So had like a diverse point of view as to like, okay, like we provide recruiting services, but the way these organizations buy is not the same, right? And so just understanding how the value proposition is, perceived differently, from organization to organization, like even different organizations within the same industry, right? Direct competitors might have very different philosophies around talent acquisition, and even like, recruitment. Is it a cost or is it an investment in our success and growth? And so, with that, did that for 6 years. And then, did a master's degree in entrepreneurship. I always, had a burning, I guess, desire to be an entrepreneur, but never knew, what it was going to be. And to be honest, I didn't think it was going to be recruitment.
Oh, really?
No, like I initially, I kind of looked at the skills gap, or maybe the gap in transition from students in university and readiness for the workforce, and just kind of seeing that, there is a gap. Like there's a lot of theoretical, teaching that happens in schools. However, employers aren't snapping up those students at the rates that, we want them to. And I think that issue has become, more pronounced. However, I wasn't ready to start a business after, doing a master's. Had a bit of debt, and got into software sales. I would say by trait, yes, I'm in recruitment, but fundamentally, I would say I'm a salesperson,
right?
And partly on a mission to, change, the ugliness of, what it means to be in sales. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think done well, what we do is we solve problems.
Yes.
Did that for a bit, and it gave me a good, perspective of, sales in tech, but, from a software angle. And then I went through a layoff, unexpectedly, laid off, and kind of just lost. And I did kind of veer back to recruitment, as a career. I, had a great career in it. Although I did have like that entrepreneurial bug in me. Now I'd gone to school and gotten the education, and I just, I'd gone to a few interviews, and at a certain point I was just like, what, this is the time. To kind of, sold a condo that I had owned at the time, and kind of went all in.
Oh, nice.
And that was the start of Millenilink. Kind of burn the ships and let's
Take a
go,
leap of
right?
faith. Yeah.
Yeah. Trying to do it one foot in for the longest time was not working. So I just kind of, decided that, this was the time. And that was the start of Millennialink. It was very much a lifestyle company for the first few years. Just, me, building it on my own, acquiring clients, that sort of thing. And I'd say those were actually like really good and informative years in terms of like being able to touch different aspects of the business. Like, naturally, when you're in sales, you're like, oh, just sell and things will be okay. And
Right.
that's how you grow, right? And, it was very much mistaken by that assumption. Although, like, look, sales definitely, drives business. I'm not saying that it doesn't, but,
Sure.
in terms of its interconnectedness to the other parts of the organization, they are pretty key. And so, going through COVID, got our first few customers. Got our first big customer prior to COVID. Got another, big customer towards the end of 2020. And that was kind of that moment where I was like, okay, like this is not just a me, role anymore. And
Right.
yeah, like I was like, I guess I'm gonna go for it and start building a team and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, I would say that was really the start of getting us to where we are now. And we're a small 6-person team and growing actively, as you know. That's really got us to where we are here. I'm sure you have questions, but that's the story in my head anyway.
No, and that's a great story, and I love this sort of the trajectory of it. But a couple questions. First off, you did go to get the master's degree in entrepreneurship. I think there are a lot of people who get a master's degree on their own, listening to podcasts about entrepreneurship and not actually going to an educational institution to learn about it. And I asked this question also in light of what you said earlier about the gap between people who are graduating from different programs and then the reality that they face in the business world.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you gained a lot from doing the education, like formally and getting a master's degree? Were there pros and cons? Were there gaps there? Or do you're like, no, I actually highly recommend it? How was the experience for you now that you look back on it?
I think it's situation specific. It was right for me.
Right.
I had only had one job. And so my main goal was to change the way I viewed business and, understand how other people approached business, approached sales, approached fundraising, approached marketing. And, that was, a great opportunity for that. So, for me, it was valuable. And I think the other thing too is, outside of, just the learning that you get in school, one of the big things you get is a network, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And, that was, great in terms of just having people to call on to help problem solve, like startup challenges. I wouldn't say, go get a master's degree to everyone. I think, what's really fundamental, and I still do this to this day, is just having some form of deliberate learning, whether it's reaching out to a mentor and having them coach you on some of those first few steps. You could go into a program and get an undergrad or a master's degree, or you could be part of like a network where you have access to people that are part of entrepreneurial ventures. It doesn't even have to be like, you going into something as the founder. Entrepreneurship is very much a team sport. Business is a team sport.
True.
But I would say the learning aspect is what's critical, not necessarily the fact that it was a master's degree. Because the reality of entrepreneurship is it's lonely and it's hard to ask questions to people that like genuinely understand the depth of maybe the problem you're trying to solve or the impact of something going bad, right?
Yeah.
And so seeking out mentors, teachers, I think is the most invaluable thing. And it really never stops, even, because every time you grow, it's the first time you've been at that size, right? Every time, whether it's revenue, employees, geography, like it's always your first time. And so the learning it's a continuous journey, but at the time it was what worked for me.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. That's a great answer. And another thing that's interesting about it is that here you are going all in. You've sold your condo. You're like, that's it. Like, burn the ships. Let's do this thing. There's no turning back now. And then you get your first client, and then COVID hits.
Yeah.
So, like, I think a lot of people. See, it's funny. You tell the story, and it's this like linear thing. But when you think about it, you graduated school in one of the worst markets that we've seen in our lifetimes to start in recruitment. But at the same time, seeing how people sold gave you something different than if you had started in a fantastic market, I'm sure.
Oh, very much. For sure.
Do you feel that that's something you still like that helped you, for example, with that challenge of, I just started my own business and now COVID's happening? Did you lean back on, well, you know what? I've seen people do this in a difficult, like, is that part of where that comes from?
Undoubtedly. Like, I would say, what got us through, so 2023 was our worst year as Millenilink. That was, tech layoffs happening across the board, right? And it was pretty daunting, to say the least. But the lessons learned from 2008 were really what helped get us through. And what I would share is, like, when we're talking to clients, we're not just giving them people, right? We're helping them advance their business in a certain direction. It could be a supply chain company, it could be Amazon, it could, I guess they're kind of similar, but it could be a food manufacturer, it could be any type of organization. We're helping them advance their business, and they need an individual with a skill to do that. And so, understanding what is critical for the business, and then tying yourself to that problem, and the solution to that problem for the organization, or a component of the solution to that problem for the organization, makes you like mission critical. Or when things get cut, this is when it's going to be one of the last things to get cut, because regardless of what happens externally, this needs to go forward, or we as a business don't function. And so, like, though, going through those lessons in 2008 are what got us through 2023. And still, I still think it's important. Naturally, right now, I would say the market in tech is, we have cautious optimism right now, but it's kind of week to week, right? Like, things are changing, rapidly, and we don't know what's going to happen, a month or two from now, and from an economic standpoint. So, it's really important in a downturn, but I think at all times, it's important to understand, even, like, for example, when we work on requirements and all of a sudden they lose funding, it's like, where on their project list was what you're working on, right? Because if it was got to go no matter what, then that funding would be there. And I think it doesn't mean don't work on the other stuff. It does mean, though, like, when you need to set a floor in your strategy, start with mission critical and work up to nice to have.
Yeah, for sure. I think even just being able to qualify the difference as a salesperson is, in some cases, and I don't mean this to be a shady statement, but when I do speak to people who are in sales, I think it's something that's like, I don't want to say it's a dead art exactly, but it's not totally being trained or encouraged.
Right.
I think, like you're saying, coming out of difficult situations and seeing how people creatively deal with that, there's successes and failures, but trying to change your MO and push through and figure things out, even if you have failures, the benefit of it is that you grow as a person, right? As a
Yeah.
salesperson, you learn. So you come out of it different, even if you didn't succeed massively. There's a benefit to you. I'm
Yeah.
seeing a lot of, environments where people aren't really getting the sales mentorship or the sales training, particularly in recruitment. And I honestly believe it's a function of the craziness that's happened since COVID. I think that COVID has been like, people aren't in the office as much. They're not hearing, like you were hearing, what the more senior people are doing that works. Some people came into a really great market and then it bottomed out. Like, how are you seeing that affect what's going on out there?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, I would agree in terms of like it's not being trained. Um, I think it's unfortunate that we're kind of there, and I think the reality is we like, in COVID, sales was you could trip over business, right? In
Yeah,
tech, like it was easy. Um, and so, I think there's, you get success, you get confidence, right? And you're like, hey, this is working. Why not? Just keep redoing what I'm doing. It's working. And then all of a sudden you hit a high interest rate season, or, something changes that's out of your control. And you're like, well, what I was doing wasn't working. Um, and there is like eh, I love working from home. I love working, in my sweatpants and all that sort of comfy stuff. But when it comes to learning, there's just different ways that we learn. We learn, by sitting down and somebody on a whiteboard teaching us how to do something. There's also like, hey, being in the field and maybe observe and watch someone else, do something. And then there's the reverse, right? Where somebody else now watches you do something, but that like, okay, well, if I screw up, this person's there to have my back. And it was almost like that, reverse, like role play, but like,
yeah,
in a live environment. Um, and you can't do that, remotely, right? You only get like the one, like hey, look at my screen and all that. And I'm sure there's, now different ways with like, VR and that sort of stuff that you can like be there. But
sure.
I think you don't catch the stuff where you're just going about your day and somebody is like listening to a conversation.
Yeah,
And you know what I mean? Or they see or hear something and they're like, hey, what was that? Can you talk to me for 2 minutes? And like that happens so much throughout my day, right? Like every single day.
yeah,
And so like, you compound that over time and, people just, learn how to handle situations better. Um, because, in recruiting, like, we're together in the office, but then you're out in the field, you're in a meeting or you're out for a coffee or a lunch, and you've got to be able to, handle, different situations. But, what I think about recruiting and, in terms of like where it has been is we're going after requirements where, we're looking for hiring managers. Who's hiring? Okay, let's call them, that sort of stuff. And my philosophy is follow the money, don't
yeah,
follow the requirements, right? Because when organizations hire, staffing is not their only option to bring in talent, right?
totally.
There's so many other alternatives to what we do where you want to understand those decisions. And so by going into conversations with like a curious mindset and just having your customers understand that like, I'm not here to sell you, I'm here to learn from you. How are you successful? Then I think it opens the door and it builds trust with the customer. And you learn how to position yourself where valuable and also step out of the way when you're not the best solution. And over time, it helps you position yourself, favorably. But you don't have to do those things all the time in a great market,
True.
right? And so you might overlook like just small things, even just regular business development, like, hey, I'm keeping up with people. So I think there's a lot of things there, but I think we kind of need to get back to just some sort of connectedness in our offices. I'm not saying, be in the office 5 days a week. We won't ever be 5 days in the office at Millenilink.
Yeah.
But having some way of creating those, unintentional moments of learning. And then also, being intentional about it as well, where possible, and, investing in people. I think, sometimes businesses might be like, oh, well, I don't want to invest in training because they might leave, right? And I think I have my personal philosophy is, maybe don't just be a good organization to be at, be a good organization to be from, right?
Right.
So
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually.
when they leave, at least, they had a good chapter kind of thing. So, yeah, like it's always a risk to invest in people and have them leave, but hopefully it doesn't happen with everyone, and some people can build great careers where they are.
Yeah, I think it's funny. The EQ piece is almost a two-way street, right? Like, I mean, you want to hire someone who has, I'm assuming, resilience, creativity,
Yeah,
good social skills, good communication skills, negotiation, etc. But it almost is like they need to possess those skills, but then as an organization, you also need to have the flip side EQ piece, like you're saying, and being willing to invest in them and sort of, not only stick to, like, there's this adage, right? Especially in a tough market where people like only stick to money making activities, right? Like what's close to money and only do that.
Right.
There's a question in my mind where sometimes I'm like, is that the most effective thing to do? Because only focusing on money making activities is like saying I'm stunting growth, though. I'm stunting growth for myself and for everybody else, because growth happens when you're doing those other things. You know what I mean?
Right.
It happens, like you're saying, incidentally and whatever. So I'm not saying go ahead and go down and do things that don't make you any money. That's obviously not the advice.
Right.
But
Right.
there's a maybe like a don't close yourself off to too much either, because there's so much that comes from being open, right?
Yeah.
And dealing with people as a human a little bit, that it's a thing that can be lost in trying to just put those blinders on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we have this conversation, sometimes it might feel like a binary decision.
Yeah.
When the reality is, you can do a bit of both. Like, one of the core like pillars of Millennialink and our core values that are really meaningful to me are, like, we are a company that prides ourselves on high performance and delivering for our clients, and working hard. And so, like, that is Millennialink, right? And you might think, well, like, to be in like a high performing role, or you could even switch to go from business to like sports or anything. Like, these are not like 8-hour jobs, right? And that is many times true. However, you can still prioritize wellness and have a culture where even the meaning of wellness like evolves as you bring in new people, and new they have different requirements for what will allow them to be successful. But I think when we are able to do the other things, like the people focused activities, right, consequentially they're more motivated and bought into wanting to execute their job, and that typically results in the ability to drive revenue and profit. So I don't see them as separate. The balance, depending on the moment in time, may change, or even the position or the individual. But I think when we're trying to, I guess, make money, it's not always going to be A to B. It might be like A to B to C to D, but we've got to go from A to B first. Like, we can't just go from A to D.
Yeah.
And so, I'm hoping that analogy makes sense, but that's really how I think of sales, but also like leading and just doing what we do in our industry. I think we want to make placements all the time, but we need to first uncover, like, what are we solving for? What is the business trying to do? What does success look like? How are you measuring it? Who else are you considering? These are all important information. This is all important information to truly turn around and deliver, in my experience.
Yeah, I think that that's a good point. Like the not skipping steps and looking at the different pieces of it as valuable, you know, short, medium, and long term. It almost feels like there's an existential debate that goes on because of the existence of AI and robotics that are automating a lot of jobs away. You know,
Yeah.
it seemed like for a little while, most of my life as an old man now of 45 years old who grew up in the 80s and 90s, people talked about companies as being like, they used phrases like, the customer is always right. We want to provide excellent service. We want to make an elite product. We want to be a brand people can trust. That's the point of a company is we want to be a trusted brand and we want people to be beloved and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, when I hear people talk about companies, the company's function is to make as much profit as possible for the shareholders. And that's what a
Right.
company is. The
Yeah.
definition of a company socially has changed in what you ask people what a company is, even
Right.
people my own age, let alone
Yeah.
people who are younger. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
are we not skipping to D there? Are we not skipping all the middle point? Because you could just invest money or be a day trader and not have a company and just make as much money as you can. The
Right.
whole company part should also be a thing, no? Where you want to provide something, solve some sort of problem, be known for
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. I think that's. Geez, you said quite a bit there. Well, now with AI, we're definitely in. We're either entering or we're already there in
Yeah,
an era. I would venture to say we're there where like economic growth is decoupled from employee growth
right. Yes, yes, for
because
sure.
of AI, right? And so that naturally is now going to maybe change attitudes towards um, the role of what we see as companies doing. The opportunity in the moment, though, is there's there's new jobs that are going to be required, or even like adjacent roles that maybe didn't exist before that maybe now will going forward. Um, and like I look at AI as a productivity multiplier, not a replacement, of people.
Yeah,
But I think we're kind of in one of the like we're in the middle of it right now. So I can't speak knowingly about what's going to come tomorrow in terms of
sure.
the role of people and technology and the coexistence of the two in business and society. But um, I think there's going to be more entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
As an entrepreneur, I would definitely encourage people to consider that. However, it doesn't mean you're going to like grow like a big company. You could be a consultant and just work on your own terms, take projects when you want them. However, that's going to take a different set of skills for you. There's a lot of people that have full-time jobs and then have roles outside of their regular 9 to 5, and so I think the traditional role and the way that we think of it is definitely going to change. However, like even as I look at big companies that we work with, like their requirement to embrace the gig economy is increasing rapidly.
yeah, for sure.
Because like baby boomers are retiring, but their life expectancy is increasing. So a lot of people 65 plus still want to work. But maybe they don't want to work full time or all the time. So they're becoming contractors. They're
Yeah,
probably the fastest rate of, one person companies, fastest demographic, growing in the one person company. So I don't have like an answer in terms of the profit versus. I do think the future of work is human and connected, and so I would venture to say that like whatever role you're in whatever capacity, the two things that I would be doing with a sense of urgency are learning how to be productive using AI in my role, and then getting out into the market. These can be, I would encourage like a hybrid approach to online and offline, but getting out and meeting people in your industry, in domains that you want to get into, and networking and learning through conversation, even when you're not looking for a role. But you don't need to be networking with the intention of looking for a job. Just network with the intention of learning about other people, what they're doing, what problems they're solving, and possibly, be of value. It could be, hey, like, you're looking to do this. Oh, I can connect you with somebody else that could do that. All of a sudden you're memorable, and, you've got a new relationship. But yeah, like, I think as we look at like what people will be doing, it'll very much be the human aspect of, most roles. I think the rate of adoption is going to change by industry, but the importance of being connected and building a network is, it's always been important, but I would say now it's, extremely important, especially when you think about like AI in ATS systems, and especially big companies, like reviewing resumes and possibly getting overlooked. Like, it's not going to work for everybody, but I do think to the degree possible, like networking and being able to, reach out to someone to say, hey, I'd love to send my resume. It's how the world has always worked, and it'll continue to work that way, for a long time. But at the same time, just developing our skills to be paired with some sort of AI tool, I think is, extremely important at this moment in time.
Yeah, and it just makes sense though, right? I guess like there's always new advances in technology. I mean, being a kid of the 80s myself, it's like, by the time I was 20 years old, there were some people in the job market who were like 40, and
Yeah.
it's like they didn't have a computer at home. They
Right.
didn't have the internet in the late 90s, right? Like
Right.
not everybody did. So they had their resume written by hand or typed out on a typewriter and whatever else. And people were like, man, you got to get a computer. You got to like go to the library or something and like
Yeah.
print out a proper
Yeah.
resume. And they needed to figure out how to change it's a big life change to never
Yeah.
have had the internet, right? And I almost feel like this is as big. If you
Oh.
don't figure out how to get, it will be bigger probably eventually, but it's as
Yeah.
big as getting the internet in every home, where you got to change your style of doing stuff.
Yeah. So like right now we have 4 generations in the workforce. We have boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, right?
Yep.
If you think about Gen Z, they, for the most part, don't know life without a smartphone.
Yeah.
Right? Like iPhones, all that sort of stuff has been around for most of their lifetime. Gen Alpha is coming into the workforce. They're, I think 12 or 13 years old right now. So they're going to be the interns in our organizations in a few years. They're not going to know a world without AI.
Yeah.
And like, millennials, we've kind of seen, a lot of that change and kept up with, or tried to keep up, at this point we're like, it's a lot, right? I actually, one of the phones when I was really young, we had like a rotary phone, but we had to put coins in it, like in our house.
Yeah. Oh
right?
my God. Amazing.
So seen a lot of change, but yeah,
Why
I
did
think,
you put coins in it? Where did the coins go?
Oh, I think we were just like trying to avoid a plan. So it was like one of those pay as you go things. And
No way.
it's like a payphone in the house. Yeah, this is in the UK.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Oh, I didn't even realize you grew up in the UK. How did I not know that about you?
Yeah. I was born there, and first 6 years of my life were in Manchester.
Oh, fantastic. So you're a Mancunian at heart. Do you like listen to the Stone Roses and do all the things and pull for Manchester United like that Mancunians do? Or
I mean, my entire family does. It's borderline disownership if you don't. But
yeah,
it's different in terms of the way they approach football or soccer. But I think going back to what you said, like, we have to kind of acknowledge that in terms of like the generational differences in the way we like look at things, and not just be curious about like our customers, but be curious about each other as team members and the way we
Totally.
interpret things and learn, and all that sort of stuff, because it is very different, right? Like, and if you've grown up with a smartphone all the time, and social media, like it just is, well, you can't blame them for being like digital first. And so we've got to like teach them about the value of human connection, but it's not always going to be like telling them what to do. You've got to show them, probably, and kind of bring them along and allow them to ask the dumb questions, because they're not dumb, and they might even have like a different perspective in terms of how to approach things. And so yeah, like technology is changing really rapidly. Generational changes are taking place. Like 5 to 10 years from now, I think it'll be primarily millennials and Gen Z across the workforce. I think right now we're at about 50%, but that number is only going to increase. And so, we need to change with the times. But yeah, like AI is, rapidly, evolving the way we learn and work. And so we've just got to kind of figure out, what that new normal looks for us. Like, we really never stop learning. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah,
Ideally,
it's kind of well, hopefully.
Yeah, some people do. You can see them; they stand out like a sore thumb. They're just like, "No, I won't."
Yeah. I don't really have much to add there. It's tough because like it's like, well, how do you operate? But
No, absolutely, and it's a challenge, but I think it's good. Like I think you have such a great attitude toward it, where you're like, yeah, that's it. Let's be curious about each other and our clients and whatever, and just sort of see how people, where their perspective is coming from. It made me think of, there was someone who started working on my team who was great at the job during COVID. She started during COVID, so it was all, we met up occasionally because she was in Toronto. She did a great job. But then admitted to me at some point, and I was like, how like when you're in an office and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, well, not really. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, I've never been in an office. And I was like, you never had a full-time job in an office. That's true. She's like, no, I mean, like, I've never been inside of a business office aside from the lobby in my entire life. And I was just kind of like, okay, client visits. We're going to client visits all the time. You're going to see the insides of all these offices, because I had never asked the question, and I'm like, it's my fault as the sort of manager to be like, yeah, I wasn't curious and I wasn't. I was like, well, how the hell are you? You're just imagining the things I'm saying. Let's at least get you some real world experience into the environments that we're placing people in, so you can get a sense of it, right? And in COVID, it was easy to just assume. And I feel sadly that that's become the case, is we're not as curious even about our team members and where they're coming from, what their perspectives are. And getting back there would be huge.
Yeah, so actually this has recently happened, but one of our new recruiters just joined me at a couple client visits, and it was after like the second one, and she's earlier in her career, had about maybe a year of experience, but we're walking back from the meeting, and I'm like, so what'd you think? And, tell me, thoughts, questions, anything like that. And she's like, it was amazing. And I was like, oh, like, tell me more. She's like, I feel so excited to go back and recruit. Like, like
awesome.
When I'm sitting behind my desk, I'm like, I know what I'm looking for, but like, when I'm sitting in front of the client, like, I understand, like, we're actually like solving like problems, and like how, like, she goes, I just feel like, I feel a larger sense of purpose.
Yes.
Right? And I would have never assumed that. Right. Because I just thought, oh, she's coming. Here's what the client says, understands that, like, when I say things, it's not just me. It's like I'm speaking on behalf of the client and all that sort of stuff. And, but like just getting that point of view was a reminder to me as a leader, like, hey, like, the way I started in recruitment is not how other people started, and their understanding of the interconnectedness of, hey, when I recruit and I place someone in an organization, and now that organization has to go on and, do business in whatever fashion, like there is a ripple effect in terms of, the value you're creating and the importance of what you're doing. And it's not just looking for skills and a voice on the other end of the phone. We're dealing with people, but it was what she said, but it was also how she said it. I
Yeah.
realized that I had struck a chord, and it was training, but it was also giving her like a different point of view of, hey, this is what you're doing is impacting these people over here, and this is how. And you can hear directly from them in terms of what you're doing and why it's so meaningful to them. So that was pretty cool. But a reminder for me as a leader to kind of just bring them out. Even if it's
Yeah.
not part of your job, just, hey, come and witness something cool or be a part of a conversation, right?
No, for sure. It connects. You used a great word, right, too, which I believe you said was it impact or purpose, and
Mhm.
impact. Those are the things I hear a lot from people who get burnt out working in recruitment, in sales, etc. And I feel like I'm reminded of a friend of mine who says, like one of the big problems he's much more highly educated than me, so this is a sort of a more university academic point of view, but it's like one of the big problems with where we're at in our stage, in end stage capitalism, if you want to call it that, is that people are so separated from the result
Yeah.
of the work that they're doing that they
Yeah.
don't feel like it's meaningful. And
Right.
it's not a money thing. You can give them commission for it, but it doesn't make them feel as humans like they're making a difference or like what they do matters really. And
Right.
after a while, that can demotivate you, no matter how
Right.
much money you're making, really.
Right.
And just being connected to that human energy of, oh, I did something and I see the result of it, and human beings had a problem that's solved, and feel the energy from them of that they're happy that this is the result of the thing that I did. That
Right.
connection again is sort of the EQ advantage that I feel to an extent we've lost, especially post COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. It's so important, and I think there's so much, like, even when you think of like just mental health and loneliness and all these
Yeah.
sorts of things being at all-time high. I no sort of therapist or anything like that, but like connection and just being the ability to see, feel, hear what you're doing and its impact on other people kind of gives you like an internal sense of satisfaction, I would imagine, and just overall job. um just understanding that you're not just checking a box. And so I think coming out of COVID, but also like now with this whole return to office um uh push that we're experiencing, I think we shouldn't just be asking people to coming back to the office just to come back to the office. Like,
Yes, agreed.
the point to coming to an office is to do the things that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. So that when they're at home, they now are recruiting from a different point of view. And I always say, like, recruiters turn job descriptions or data points into stories. So, a candidate can say, hey, not just what are the skills that you're asking me, but like, how will this impact my career? Where will this help me go to next? These are my goals. Is this the path there, or do you suggest something else? Like, that is the value that we provide. It's not necessarily like matching keywords on a resume or updating a resume. It's really being able to say, hey, you're here, I know you want to go here. This organization is is looking for someone like you, right? And I think you'd be able to achieve your goals both personally and professionally. um, and so I think as we return to office, we have an opportunity to kind of close these gaps, and kind of help impact positively some of the challenges that maybe we faced, because at the end of the day, like, when you think of like the profession of recruitment, like, I know historically we've always said people are the most important asset in a business, right? Nowadays, you're probably being challenged, and you'd probably say data is, right. Like, toss up. Yeah, data is now the 21st century oil, but um, it's still up there. It's on the podium, right? In terms of like, when we provide good people that move business forward, like, that impact is ginormous. And so it's important to witness that and understand, the downstream impact of um, what a successful or unsuccessful placement looks like, and be able to just continue to build on our value proposition as recruiters. Because on one hand, when we don't, we devalue ourselves and our industry.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, when we do, our clients love us.
It's true. It is absolutely true. Like it's important, and part of the raison d'être of this podcast is also to focus on the humanizing what it is we do a little bit, because I think
Right.
that there is, especially during COVID, there got to be a pretty low point of people feeling like we saw online, like all the memes about how terrible recruiters are and they ghost you all the time and they're like not people and they have no souls and so on. And I mean, there's some truth to it in terms of the treatment, right? Not that they have
Yeah.
no soul,
Oh yeah.
but
Oh, yeah.
and so humanizing it and also getting back to it and realizing, I think that part of it is like a byproduct of the discussion in business a lot too, like just socially, whatever, is efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. And I mean, we're at a point now where humans are not the most efficient option to
Mhm.
get done a lot of the things that you want to get done. So there
Right.
is literally like, okay, cool. So if we're only looking at efficiency, that just means no people. And I
Right.
don't think society functions if we're just like, no, let's get machines to do everything. What is like what is a job then in the end anyway? Like, what are we doing
Right.
in life? Will we have a sense of purpose and all this other stuff? And to remember that we are the job market actively, like every day, the choices that we make and what we do and whatever we're not at the mercy of it really. Like we're
Yeah,
participants.
and we're also the consumers, right?
Yeah,
Like, we're the people on the other end motivating these companies to take on these initiatives. And so, like, until further notice, as far as I know, AI is not buying stuff right now.
not yet. God, thank God.
But we are the job market, but we're also the consumer. And
Yeah,
so, like, just understanding that, and then reverse engineering the puzzle, is a really important skill for us to develop. And like I said, the demographics are changing with the various generations, but at the end of the day, it is people.
yeah, it is, and it will remain. So quickly, then, what would you say are the main things that you look for or feel that people will look for in the way things are evolving, that are more
Yeah.
EQ driven than just the matching skills on a resume, both for you as an employer and also just for recruiters out there? Like, what are the things you think people need to look for in an EQ hire?
Yeah. So I'll give you mine, and I'm sure we could add on to it. But um, one of the top ones is curiosity, right? Like, you don't need to know everything. You do need to be like an active listener that can pay attention and ask questions. Super important. I would also say critical thinking. And so once you've gathered all the information from an organization, what do you do with it, and are you able to relay back to the customer, like, validating that you understand their problem and the impact of the problem, and then giving them confidence that you or your organization are the partner to help them solve that problem. On that, I would also say we're in the people business, and like, empathy is of the highest importance.
Oh yeah.
And just being able to understand where people are coming from, either when they're looking for a job or even when they're hiring. And they may have to execute a hiring process that is not optimal or doesn't always achieve like what they're looking for, but maybe certain decisions are above their pay grade. And so it's like, okay, we've got to be creative here. How do we get you the results when you're working in within the confines of certain constraints? That's what I've said: critical thinking, curiosity, empathy, problem solving. At the end of the day, I do sales. And by the way, like, when we talk about recruitment, especially as an agency,
Yeah.
that is a sales role. It is not HR. HR does a lot more than what we do as recruiters. But I would say problem solving, right? When people look for new roles, it's not always just to pay just a paycheck. Like it is. I always say, pay is one of the top 3 reasons they look for new work, but it's rarely number one. Creativity. I think in a landscape of different buying behavior, different people within organizations now hiring, say, for example, tech talent is not just hired by the technology department. It could, nowadays, finance could want their own people reporting directly to them with technical skill sets. So, creativity, learning, deliberate learning. I think just because as soon as we learn something, there's always something new, right? Like just a few weeks ago, I'm part of like a forum of entrepreneurs, and one of them was talking about like the new release of Claude Code, and that was how I learned about it. And it had dropped like 2 or 3 weeks prior to that meeting, but already they were like regurgitating all these different use cases that they had applied in their businesses. And I'm sitting there like, this happened 3 weeks ago? Like, you guys are like going into the future already. You know what I mean? And so like the rate of change is crazy. So just, deliberate learning. And I think with that, like being coachable, I think, it doesn't matter how smart or experienced you are. Like, we always have something to learn from people with more experience, but there's also actually a really high value in learning from people that are naive or don't know anything about the vocation that they're entering into, because they don't have any sort of bias or previous frame of reference, and they just tell it how it is, almost like a kid, right? With childlike curiosity.
No, it's a very good point.
You just learn from them. So, coachability and learning, those are 2. Now I'm sure I'm missing others, but I think those are like the big ones. And I think when you have the majority of those, like you don't have to have all of them. We can teach you, how to recruit, but if you have empathy and you have the ability to ask questions, and you have the ability to look at information and say, okay, this person wants this. Do they exist? Maybe not. Okay. Maybe I can challenge them back and just, kind of problem solve with the customer. Not because I don't want to give them this person, but I just don't know if I want to sign up and say I can find it when I don't think it exists. Right. So I think just having that, a combination of those things, and I think the IQ part of, this is how you structure a conversation, all that sort of stuff, is that can be done, later on.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I hope to hear more of this from my own clients and other people out there on the market. I feel like there's a fear whenever, big events happen, whether it's COVID or the 2009 market crash, or, now obviously there's various conflicts going on globally. And so, the price of gas, or price of oil rather, and the stock market, and there's always something. But when those things happen, I feel like people are like, give me someone with an existing book of business that I can predict, and that's it. And you never can predict it, and so it's just kind of like, I understand why people are afraid and also need to hire, so I sympathize. It's not like I'm saying I don't get it, but I look forward to more conversations which are like you're saying, like who is this person? Do they have capacities that they don't even realize yet that we can help unlock, that could have a long potential run with us and do things they didn't even know that were possible? Like that's much more exciting and human and rewarding.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I would say, looking for people with a book of business is fantastic. I understand it. I do it. And you know that, but
totally.
Can they replicate it in your organization? That's not always the case, right?
Exactly.
Especially if they walked into an MSA versus put it in place. I think some of the other stuff, just kind of lends itself to be more flexible to different situations, where it's like, okay, in this situation, do this. In that situation, do that. Okay, in this, don't do what you did over here, over there, but keep doing. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's so much, because, like, I say recruitment is not rocket science, but there is an insane amount of variables, because our product is people, and so like there's the organization of information is absolutely critical. because there's just so many angles that something could come up and change a successful placement or not. And so yeah, this is now turning into one of our 90-minute conversations where I'm like, oh, there's a lot here, but yeah, it's not rocket science, but there's just so much information that we have to be cognizant of, where I think some of the EQ stuff lends itself to just asking why, and again and again and again, and then at a certain point you will understand, but asking once, you typically get the what, not the why, or what does success look like.
Yeah, totally. You don't get any of the nuances, which is really where we thrive.
Right.
Absolutely. I
have
two quick questions I want to throw to you before we go. I know we're slightly over time, but they're related. One, is there, think of something that that was around when you were young that isn't around anymore, that you either, and do you miss it, and why?
Well, because we were talking about the phone, like I'm just thinking like pay phones.
Yeah.
Do I miss them? No. I think there's a novelty, like when I see them in movies and stuff, like, one, I feel old, but
yeah,
sure. There's definitely, we were just different. Like, I think we were okay with like silence and not having like instant replies and all that sort of stuff. And so I miss that, right? Yeah. Just the ability to like not have to be like, hey, well, you read my text, why didn't you respond? But yeah, like, in general, I would say pay or landline type of phones. I think some places still have landlines, but it's not really commonplace anymore.
That you're totally right, though. It's crazy to think that people under a certain age don't know what life was like when it wasn't an expectation that you were always available whenever someone wanted to talk to you.
Right.
It's a completely different way of living, which is undersold nowadays. That it's how different.
Yeah, nowadays, like, we meditate just to have those moments of silence, where before we just had moments of silence and it was normal, right?
Yeah. And if we sat around somewhere reading a book or playing a game or doing whatever we're doing with our friends or by ourselves or whatever, there was no expectation that we needed to be available when someone else had some random idea they wanted to talk to us about.
Right.
Or question. That wasn't even in our heads.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, like I miss it. I think it's like anything. There's good and bad with it. But sure. I am a big fan of just digital detoxes every once in a while. I very much enjoy being unavailable.
Yeah, it's a luxury now. Where before it was normal, now it's a huge luxury. Flip side to that question, then, is there anything that exists right now that you think won't exist at some point in your lifetime, and will you miss it?
Won't exist?
Yeah, that will go away. That will go the way of the dinosaur, still within our lifetimes, and will you miss it then? Something that we have now.
I don't know. I don't know that they're going away. You know what? I'm struggling with this one. I was gonna say like books and stuff like that, just because like I feel like we're going to like audio and even like Kindle and all that sort of stuff. Will I miss it? I'm very much an audiobook person, but I can't do a Kindle. So like whenever I'm either traveling or on vacation, like I love a paperback, book. But I don't think that's going away. I just think it's less popular, maybe. I don't know. What do you think might go away? And
I agree with you that
you
it's
might possibly miss.
Going away, though. I think it is in danger of going away someday. That people will see.
Yeah, like even like the whole concept of. So like, if I'm in a client meeting, typically ask permission, but, I'll put on an AI note taker and AI will take notes. But I still, to this day, a pen and paper.
Yeah. Like, oh, awesome.
Whatever stands out to me, because as soon as I come out of the meeting, like that is now committed to memory. Yeah. And actually, it was funny when I started hiring people, I got, they were like, your business is all in your head. And it's true. It was true. I know it's been an adjustment for me, but yeah, like the whole concept of like writing stuff down, like with a pen and paper, is or reading like a paperback. Um, there's something about it, right?
Yep.
And I think as we go more digital, we forget the value of some of the old things. And I think as a millennial, I'm kind of in the middle because I'm like, okay, digital advances, they're great, efficiency, all that sort of stuff, all the buzzwords, love it. But some of the stuff that like was pretty great, and
Yep.
like I don't want to lose it. So and like a lot of it, as we take on technology, like we kind of get away from some of the natural ways like our brains work and the way we learn and all that sort of stuff. So I don't want to get too digital where it's like we just the natural ways of learning information are now like just foreign concepts.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And honestly, there is a theory out there, and I don't know how much water it holds because I'm not really educated on this, but there is a theory out there that to your point, you said when you write it down with a pen
Yeah.
and paper that you've committed it to memory. There is
Yeah.
a theory that making the form of the letters with your hand, your actual body is making the form of each letter, that it actually becomes part of your memory in a very tactile way that typing does not do. Typing is like we type it so my computer can remember it. So there's a psychological, but also a physical difference. And
Right.
there is, I think, water. Like the theory you're saying holds water. I think there is a theory out there that it's like if writing it down actually helps you really take in the information.
Yeah.
So it's a good point.
Yeah, it's my way of speed and efficiency because I figure if it's in my head, then I can regurgitate it in a meeting. Versus if it's like not, then it's like I'm going into the CRM. Oh, internet's down, and now I'm done. I'm stuck. So
you're not. Yeah, you're independent by having it in your head in a way.
Yeah.
Well, that was awesome. Thank you, Sabe. Very much appreciated to have you here. I'm glad we were still able to do this.
Yeah, thank you for the last minute, transfer over to WeWork. However, if we do anything, like you're always welcome to come to our office.
Absolutely. If it isn't at the very last imaginable second, I will happily come down to Millenilink and we can do it live, both of us, next time.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time, Rick. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. And if you're watching this live, you can also listen after the fact to Recruiting EQ anywhere you get your podcasts. In fact, if you cannot find it where you get your podcasts, please DM me and I will fix that. Thanks a lot, guys, and see you next episode.